I got the meaning, and I got to write it down, because I don't want to forget it.
Just win, baby.
And welcome back to the Gold Jacket Podcast, proudly sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. They truly have it all. Daily, weekly, and season-long best ball tournaments happening 365 days a year. Plus, you can play their pick 'em prop games where you pick 5 picks right and you can get 20 times your money. Make sure you take advantage of promo code UNDROPPABLES when you sign up, and you can double your initial deposit by up to $100. I'm your host, Gymnastic. Out of breath. You can find me on Twitter at GoldJacketQBs. I'm joined as always by the other host of the show, Connor Donald. You can find him absolutely everywhere, rocking it on other podcasts, on other platforms. But you can also find him on Twitter at Connor10. That's TEN, not the ones and zeros. Proud members of the Undroppables. You can find them at theundroppables.com, at the Undroppables on Twitter, and the Undroppables on YouTube. Tonight we're wrapping up week 13. Who gives a shit? You're probably thinking. We're looking for those fantasy managers that don't have the first round buys in the playoffs, looking in week 14. And you gotta battle it out in your week 14 playoffs. We're looking at news and stories. But first, Connor, what's happening, buddy?
Not much, man. Excited to talk about playoffs, man. We have reached that time. It has been many hard-fought weeks, and we are in the playoff stage for you. So, warning, we are not doing a buy and sell this week or next week or the next week. Because obviously there may be some leagues where there's no trade deadline, but otherwise right now we are under the assumption that there would be no more trade deadline, or that you won't be making any deals. So we aren't going to do any buying and selling. We're just going to focus on the stories that matter and the gold and the fool's gold to get you going for this week. So Jim, if you're ready, let's dive right into the stories. Probably the biggest actually it's 2 really big stories. I'm going to go with this one as a really big one because the other one, the guy has had the quarterback per se has had some issues. Deebo Samuel has a high ankle sprain. He's likely back in the regular season, although at a minimum, based on what was said today, he will likely return in 3 weeks at a minimum, which would be your championship week, and it's a high ankle sprain, so he's unlikely to have a massive impact in your championship week. But any thoughts on the Deebo Samuel injury, Jim? I know we've talked about this offense ad nauseum, especially in regards to they cannibalize each other, so this has to be a positive for Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk, is it not? You mute it.
Yeah, I think it's a positive for Brandon Ayuk, especially because this offense is still looking pretty nice. Rolling on the Purdy there again. A testament that they're not really asking him to do much. And what he is doing is enough, man. But with this, you're again a late season blossom of Brandon Ayuk, like we did in his rookie year, and again take teams to possibly a fantasy championship. So I think it's good for 2 of those 3 guys, but especially.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I had somebody ask me today, do you think this positively impacts George Kittle? I said, at the end of the day, all of these guys cannibalized each other. Anybody out of the picture, as bad as it is, because we don't wish injuries upon anyone, we don't want any of that, but anybody in an offense that cannibalizes each other, it's a positive to have one of them not be in the offense. So, I mean, while I think this plays extremely well for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, I think it also helps George Kittle. I think it also helps Brandon Ayuk greatly. I think some managers will look back on this offense and say, one of these guys won me my league. And it will largely loom back on the Deebo Samuel injury because it opened up the opportunity for one of these other guys to really produce. Anything more to add, Jim?
For cost, it's going to be Ayuk that ends up winning you fantasy championships. CMC was still a pretty decent commodity if you were drafting, but Ayuk, cheaper.
Absolutely. Anyway, I agree with that.
Let's keep up.
We'll move into, okay, so this was a report.
This one, let's talk about this one.
So this was a report that emerged recently. Jared Goff, and I mean, it makes sense because based on their draft position, they may not even draft in the top 10. So they are clearly not drafting a quarterback. Jared Goff is expected to be the Lions starting quarterback in 2023. And as of current reports, he will be for the foreseeable future. We love to talk about values on this show. So I want to start out with one thing. Who is the biggest winner in this on the Detroit Lions offense? And then B, what would you buy, would you sell, or would you hold Jared Goff based on this news?
Depends on what he is for you. You know what I mean? Like if he's your QB1, your team's in some desperation needs, I think. And that's a sell to me. Try to hit on a quarterback and then flip him for some new picks and really try to rebuild it. If he's your quarterback 2 and you're making a playoff run, strong playoff run, maybe a first round bye team, I think you got to hold him. I love what it's doing for the Sun God. I mean, he's getting peppered with targets. The future looks bright for Jameson Williams with that ability that he looked to possess in a limited fashion in that game. It's looking good, man. It's looking good, but it shocked me to see that he was going to be their quarterback for 2023 and the foreseeable future. He's won enough games to put himself in job security. That's nuts.
Yeah, I mean,
to put him just out of reach of a good quarterback.
I agree. Like at the end of the day, they've won 5 in a row. It is huge. I get it. This team, as are a number of teams, seem to be held ahead in their rebuild or their retool, whatever you want to call it. I agree with you. Amon-Ra St. Brown is getting peppered with targets. This seems to be, if they bring back Jamal Williams, it would be a major positive for him because he seems to work in conjunction with this offense. The tight ends, it doesn't really matter because the tight ends seem to be almost useless. It's like there's 2 or 3 wide receivers. It seems like it's the wide receivers you really want to have in this offense because on any given week, you can kind of trust at least 2 of them. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown plus DJ Chark, who's on a 1-year contract and is a free agent as well. Josh Reynolds, who I think is also on a 1-year contract as well. This team is going to look really different next year, but one thing seems to be certain. It's going to be Jared Goff. It's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's going to be DeAndre Swift. Outside of that, it's going to be an intriguing offseason and a very interesting offense to look at in the offseason and try and decipher, can Jared Goff work? Jared Goff has proven he can work outside of somebody controlling him. Like the narrative was in LA was Sean McVay was in his ear until he was cut off. But it feels like this offense doesn't work in that mindset. And it feels like this offense is working for Jared Goff. Is he a buy? Is he sell? Is he a hold? I would say at this point, as soon as your offseason opens, this is a starting quarterback. This is a guy who's got job security. He's got a job at least for 1 year. Look at the guys who went and picked up Geno Smith. Go talk to those guys. Look at the Jimmy Garoppolo managers. Go talk to those guys. I think this is a guy that you have to sell because at most he's a year, he might be 2 years, but he is, if he was not the future in an LA Rams team that I think was better than this Detroit Lions team, I don't know if he is the future quarterback for this Detroit Lions team to lead this Detroit Lions team to anything meaningful. So I would be more on the, if you have a good opportunity to sell him. But I do have to ask you, Jim, if you're selling, what would be the price?
Here's the thing, though, man. Like I said, if you're going to be playoff deep, especially if your first round playoff deep, he's worth more in your team now. And like you implemented, he's going to be a starting quarterback next year anyway. His value is not going to drop. I don't see anyway from being a first rounder. But if I'm selling him, like I just told you right there, first rounder, man, for sure. Quarterback in the NFL that has propped up a top 24 wide receiver in Amon-Ra, and when Hawk was there, has a good solid running game with Swaggy P and Swift there. I don't know, man. The value to me would be a first plus.
I agree.
He had on a first plus, probably like a young prospect that
I agree. I just think like the plus, maybe not. I'd definitely be willing to move for a first. But I think we're seeing like a shift in the mentality of how the NFL functions. Look at Geno Smith. Look at Jimmy Garoppolo and where he may end up. Look at the teams that have invested heavily in the non-rental quarterback market. Ask the Denver Broncos how things are going. Yes, Russell Wilson was injured this past week, but they're out of the playoffs. They were a loss away from being out of the playoffs no matter what. So look at that type of circumstance. There's some of these teams who are a bridge quarterback away, and you're getting pennies on the dollar for these guys. You are investing almost no fab. Geno Smith, Taylor Heineke, these guys were people you probably picked up for nothing, and these are guys who should be being moved instantly. If Heineke becomes a starting quarterback next year in Washington, they feel he's done enough to be the starting quarterback in Washington. If they beat the Giants this week, they're still in the run to be a playoff team. They're still a team who could look at Heineke and be like, maybe we got to roll with this guy. Maybe we got to see what this guy's got for a year. It'll be really interesting to see, but it feels like there's a shift in the NFL, and it comes from the fact that the quarterback classes have not been as strong in recent memory as other draft classes have been, and teams are being forced to pivot to these bridge quarterbacks. And in fantasy purposes, we have to decide, is the bridge quarterback value enough? When do we need to pull the trigger on moving that bridge quarterback? When are they not of a value to my team? And I think that's the really difficult question to answer. And the value that you're going to get, of course. Anything more on that, Jim?
Love
it. All right. So I got another thing. We talked about this on our Eagles show, or on my Eagles show, and you kind of popped into the chat during the show and you were talking about it. T.Y. Hilton to the Dallas Cowboys, Cole Beasley going back to the Buffalo Bills, two front runners in the Odell Beckham Jr. market. This is playoff time. Is there one of these two guys? First of all, how much fab would you drop on them if they are available? And second of all, who would you trust as potentially, I'm not going to say wide receiver 1 or 2. These are flex plays. These two guys would be 100% flex plays. What would you spend in fab
Beasley
and flex?
Me right now, again, as I alluded to last week, I stated that I'm pretty cheap. So right now I got a lot of fab. So like I'd be getting the maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I'd be getting the Huntleys, I'd be getting the Purdy's, I'll be getting the Colt McCoys, I'll be getting all these guys that drop. I'll drop as much fab as I need to. I'll probably have like 80% of my fab budget still left sitting right now. So like $1 more than whatever my closest fab opponent could be is probably what I dropped for Beasley, and it would be beat over by. I was that desperate to pick up one of them because first off, they're probably both washed. Second off, I don't really Third off, in one, you're going to take the one that was the least effective in the offense that he's returning to. Right? I have no idea in Dallas. I know what Cole Beasley is going to be asked to do in Buffalo. And for immediate impact, that's the guy you got to go to, in my opinion. Spuddy?
I agree with you. I think that it's got to be Cole Beasley. If you're going to go with anybody, it's a guy who's familiar with the offense. He's a guy who, if you're looking for the points, is probably going to be one that can give you the points. And the worst part is it likely would hurt more a guy like Gabe Davis or a guy more like Dawson Knox than it hurts a Stephon Diggs. So if you're a Dawson Knox manager, if you're a Stephon Diggs zone manager, you're definitely sitting there and you're thinking, what am I going to do here? Or I'm going to start this guy and Cole Beasley's going to end up eating like 6 to 10 targets a game. And it's going to come exclusively from those two guys because Stephon Diggs, you're not going to take any targets away from that guy. And that's just, it seems to me the nature of the beast there. Whereas in Dallas, I mean, it feels like T.Y. Hilton needs to learn the offense. He needs to make sure he can be healthy for you. To me, at this point, if anything, the only opportunity to trust T.Y. Hilton would be in the final week of the fantasy playoffs. And then at that point, is even with trust, are you even willing to roll him out whatsoever? I don't think I would at all. So it's just the nature of the beast to me. I think Cole Beasley, if he comes out there this week and he goes off and gets 5 or 6 targets, you can sit there and say, maybe there's an opportunity based on a matchup that I can trust this guy in a pinch in my flex position, especially because we know there is a boatload of injuries out there for fantasy managers right now. And they're just trying to deal with each injury one by one and figuring out who you want to play in a specific circumstance. So I'm going Cole Beasley. I agree with you, Jim. I think the easy answer, the safe answer is Cole Beasley, whereas T.Y. Hilton shouldn't matter to fantasy managers because he is strictly meant for the Dallas Cowboys playoff run and what they might be able to do in the playoffs and what they can do to generate more passing offense later in the season and in the playoffs when it matters most to them, not when it matters in the fantasy realm. Anything more you want to add on that front, Jim?
Absolutely not for that pretty well.
Love it. So we'll move into Kyler Murray. This hurts because I have him in a league or two. Kyler Murray tore his ACL. He will be out for the remainder of this season, obviously. I would not be necessarily surprised if he may miss the start of next season. Although we've seen torn ACLs, they tend to heal a lot quicker. But the severity of the ACL injury, I guess that is still to be seen. Because as we discussed in one of our group chats, J.K. Dobbins did not look good. But Kyler Murray is a lot more athletic than J.K. Dobbins. But for J.K. Dobbins managers, if you're a manager, I feel like, if there's some big games that you can sell off of, I think is a really good time to, because especially on that big 60-yard run, Jim, that was the point of contention in our group conversation. That was not your typical 60-yard run.
Closest run I've ever seen.
Agreed. It was bad. It didn't look good. The guy's not 100% healthy. I really don't think the guy should be out on the football field. And if I was a manager for him, I would be concerned going into these 3 weeks to hope to be able to consider leaning on him as I am with a couple other running backs as well. What's the impact of Kyler Murray on this torn ACL? I think the biggest impact to me is I think this impacts James Conner. I really think that this could have a negative impact on James Conner. But otherwise, I mean, Marquise Brown and Dobbins or Hopkins, and like it's not a good offense in general if you have to lean on these guys for your playoff run. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Jim?
Let's just talk about how it really affects. It affects first round teams, man. You're getting knocked out of the playoffs if you're like Kyler was your QB1, you're done. You're probably fucking done. Like, I don't know. I think that's what it is. It is the end of a run for a lot of promising teams. That's what I think is the biggest effect.
I agree, definitely. For those teams who, I mean, you got there on kind of the back on Kyler Murray, it's probably not a great feeling to know that this is a guy that was your QB1. Likely, I mean, if he's your QB2, you probably have an incredible QB1 and you have nothing to worry about. But I mean, ultimately, this is a major negative for those people who made it to the playoffs, ride in the back of Kyler Murray, or hoping to be able to ride the back of Kyler Murray. The return of DeAndre Hopkins in this offense being rejuvenated, a return to form for this offense. It just doesn't feel that way. Now, I mean, a couple weeks ago, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins as being a league winner. While he's going to see 10 targets a game, how effective are those targets going to be? Are they going to be catchable targets? Is it going to be something he can work with? Marquise Brown, how is that going to work in this offense? James Conner. I mean, we saw it, and the New England Patriots are pretty effective defense. But at the end of the day, we saw them get really beat down and really shut down. And I don't know if you can really trust this offense moving forward other than flex options and hoping that they can give you some boom games at this point. One more one that I wanted to talk about, Jim, and probably should talk about it in unison with Jared Goff, was Geno Smith. The Seahawks are looking.
Yeah, you totally fucked that up.
Geno Smith, so the Seahawks are looking to extend him long term. What are the impacts on the fantasy assets? And if you were a Geno manager, which I know you are in a couple leagues, what would your asking price be? Who is the more premium quarterback to you, Jared Goff or Geno Smith?
Oh man. Fuck. The fact that, you know what? I'd have to say Geno on the fact that I got him on more leagues than Goff. So I probably think a little higher of him. I own Geno. And a few asking price would probably be actually, you know what? I'm interested to know your asking price as a non-partisan.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny you say that because I actually have Goff in more leagues than I have Geno, and I think you have Geno in more leagues than I have Goff. So I really think like this is really intriguing. To me, Goff, they've said for 2023 and the foreseeable future. Geno, they want to commit long term. To me, if there is a asset that has a premium, it would be Geno Smith to me, because this team is clearly committed. It worked extremely well with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's out, he's injured, whatever. When he comes back, this offense seems to run extremely effectively as a run-first offense. Is Geno Smith necessarily the answer? No, but the fact that Jared Goff, they say for 2023 or the foreseeable future, Geno Smith, they want to extend long term. Like they might be looking at 3-4 years, where at a minimum, this guy's your guy
that's
for
a very logical point.
Yeah, this guy's a guy for like 2 years minimum. If you're signing him long term, Gino to me has a stronger value than Jared Goff. That's why, like, if you're willing to get, if you're able to get a second plus, I'm game. If Gino should fetch you a first plus because of the long term ramifications. While it doesn't necessarily like DK Metcalf, it hasn't been great for Lockett. It hasn't been great for a while. It may not work great for the ancillary assets. This is a great time. Like if they lock Geno into any contract, I am selling Geno Smith and I'm running away.
What's your asking price for first?
This is where I would say a first plus. I'm open to a first plus for Geno Smith because I think that's realistic. I don't think it'll be.
Yeah,
I don't
but
think it'll
where's
be
your
high
first
end.
gotta land?
It's not high end. It's not high end. Like I think this is a mid to back end first rounder. I'm okay with that. With Goff, second rounder is a second rounder.
4 to 6.
Which is fair. That's the middle. That's the middle.
No,
like
I'm
I'm
looking
okay.
for like 4 to 6 for Geno plus, and I'm looking for back end for Goff. Back end first for Goff.
See, like I guess like I guess I'm more I don't know, maybe I'm more realistic, I don't know, but like I just feel like Jared Goff, based on his experience and what you've seen from him and what has happened with him, there's a lot of inconsistency. There isn't a trust there to invest a first round pick in him. Geno Smith, there's been a little bit more consistency. Like a first plus is reasonable, but if you're asking for 4 to 6, you may just be stuck with that first plus a very minimal impact player or pick or asset. Whereas if you're willing to take a back mid to back end, you might get a better.
Yeah, 5 to 6 because I think you can get better on draft day. But like Goff doesn't fucking matter. He's a starting quarterback in a super and you gotta get a first round pick out of him, or at least a player first round pick value.
I agree. If there's an opportunity to get anywhere near like a first round,
this is also coming from a guy that just sold Russell Wilson cheap. Right, so
listen,
cheap.
Is there any reason not to sell Russell Wilson cheap? I don't know, man. I mean, at this point, like if you call it cheap, it might actually be rich.
And I kept Geno in that league,
which is, but at the end of the day, it's fine.
Russell Wilson, Russ and Knox for fuck. Yeah, it was bad, but I mean, whatever.
But I get it. Like, I mean, I see it in some leagues. If you're sitting there holding the bag with 3 or 4 starting quarterbacks, there's a lot of people who aren't going to do business with you. I'm in a league where Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Patrick Mahomes, and I think another quarterback starter beyond that are all under the same manager. And he tried to get a absolute landslide for the picks that ended up being Lance and Lawrence, and it didn't work. And now he's sitting there with like 3 or 4 starting quarterbacks on his roster, and he can only start 2 on any given week, and nobody's willing to do business with him. So at some point, you have to understand, like, you can't sit there and just in Superflex hog quarterbacks and sit there and say, oh, someone's going to come to me eventually, especially if you're trying to hold the top end of the quarterbacks and your expectation is eventually someone's going to come and give me multiple first rounders for this guy. Like, it's just not realistic. And that's where I think that some people go wrong in Superflex leagues, is that people think that the quarterback is a be-all, end-all, but I think a guy like Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jared Goff have proved otherwise, that people are willing to say, I'll settle for this guy because this guy could do the trick. Why would I invest multiple first-rounders to get one of your 4 quarterbacks when you can only play 2 of them on a given week anyways? So that's why I think there's like the slippery slope fallacy with quarterbacks in Superflex leagues is you can hog a whole lot of starting quarterbacks, but eventually you may end up having to sell at a price lesser than what you thought, based on the fact that people know eventually you have to sell these quarterbacks, or you're just going to be stuck with that tough decision week in and week out. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. I don't know if you've anything to add on the super flex quarterback front, Jim, because I would love to get more input.
Oh,
You're good.
man. Okay. There are people that don't want to trade with certain people. And it is frustrating. Like I said, I did just sell Russ and Dawson Knox in a league that was for Brian Robinson. But and I got knocked out of the fucking playoff spot. It was fucking brutal. It is frustrating, man. But like I've been in other leagues where it doesn't really matter. Held the league for ransom, was a very good team otherwise. Not a 1 or a 2, but I was like in the 3 or 4 range where I was doing enough damage that other teams had to trade with me to keep up. So there's 2 different points of view. If you can end up hitting on your other draft picks and build somehow of a decent team in your league in year 1, then you can put them to their mercy. In other leagues, you have to do a patient build if you're going to take 4 or 5 good quarterbacks, because again, it's a very long shelf life. You would have to be patient and do like a 3-year thing where you're going to get your value. To get a team that you have to have a team that can compete in your league. And like, I don't mean 6, 7, 8 seed, bottom of the barrel trying to compete with your playoffs. You got to have a team that's like the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed. Really seed. And force teams to try to compete with you to try to win it, because getting playoff, if you're not winning it, it doesn't really matter. You have to have teams fear you to try to beat you and put them in a place to trade with you. That's my opinion. Sorry.
Let's
get right into the meat and potatoes.
I want to cap it out by saying I do like your opinion, but I do understand in some leagues like eventually, like if your fear is building this impenetrable wall of quarterbacks and you can only start 2 on a given week, there's likely a weakness elsewhere. There's likely something that you're just trying to hold on to because you're saying this is super flex, it's quarterback or bust. Like, to me, I don't think that that's the way that you should be. I think you should be open and willing to make the move. And if the difference is 2 times first and a second, or 3 times first, and you're holding firm to 3 times a first, maybe, I don't know.
You see, that's a miscommunication. That's not where I'm at. I'm like, okay, you need to take your team. Say you have Burrow, a Jimmy G, and a Geno Smith. Okay, you got those 4. You can only start 2 now. You're starting Pat, and then you're going to start one of the other 4. Take your fucking pick this year, and then running back, because that's a very sparse position, especially with you got pretty good wide receiver core. You hit on some late round gems. You got Garrett Wilson. You got some. That's where you end up trading a guy like Geno Smith, or okay, Lawrence. You're gonna trade for, a high end running back that can get you keep moving in the playoffs. Plus, that's where you're gonna go for, like, instead of that approach of 3 times first, you're gonna go for a running back that like one of the top 12 in the terms of fantasy plus up in rank. You know what I mean?
I agree. I agree.
I'm in a
I
league
just
right
think like
now I got 4.
No, and that's and like I'm not saying it's an issue to have four. Like I think like you're at a good spot if you have three, four is a premium and stuff. I just think like gone are the days of the strategy of I should hog quarterbacks or hogging quarterbacks is going to get me premium capital in return. And I think that, but like people are too invested in I need to get picks out of these quarterbacks. Whereas, like you exactly said, I think there is a very good opportunity to get premium in different ways. Where when you say 3 times a first, there's also an opportunity to look at, oh, well, I got four startable wide receivers on a given week, but I should probably figure out how to shore up that flex spot with a wide receiver or something. Like, I feel like there's really good opportunities elsewhere to really hammer down a proper strategy. And I really think that gone are the days of hoarding quarterbacks and getting premium value is going to be the proper strategy, especially in a super flex league. That's more the point that I was getting at. And I know that throughout the offseason, we'll definitely hit on some of these discussion points. So I can't wait to hit on those. But let's move in, like you said, to the meat and potatoes, and that's the gold and the fool's gold portion of this game. We're going to talk about the goal. We were talking about guys you may not be expecting to give you a really good game, may help you move into the next round of the playoffs. And a fool's gold who is somebody who you're probably sitting there and you're like, I'm starting, I don't care who tells me anything, but may have a very tough matchup or may have a situation like, you know, the Buffalo Bills wide receivers last week, who ended up, none of them scored over 10 points, who really bomb it for you, who, if you listen to the show, I told you Gabe Davis was someone you shouldn't start because it was Stephon Diggs or bust, and then all of them ended up with less than 10 points. So it was really a completely avoid that wide receiving core. But some of the people that we're looking at who may cost you weeks. Quarterback for me, I got at the goal position, I got Matt Ryan up against Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings have allowed 23 plus points to fantasy quarterbacks in 7 of the last 8 games, including 25 plus to a gauntlet of Mac Jones, Mike White, and Jared Goff in the last 3 weeks. Ryan hasn't been great this season, but neither have many quarterbacks who've delivered quarterback one performances. Ryan has 3 QB1 performances across 11 starts. Injuries and inconsistent QB play could have many turn into a matchup-based situation like Matt Ryan this week. Fool's gold, we touched on him earlier, and I'm sorry, Jim, I know you're probably starting him in some leagues. I got Geno Smith against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Smith has some managers riding high with the low fab waiver wire acquisition, low investment in him. However, week 1 of the playoffs is a tough one for Smith, who faces the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco is one of the reasons Brady may be reconsidering retirement after last week. They have allowed 1 QB to go over 20 points in the last 6 weeks, and it was Tua and the electric Miami offense. Plus, San Francisco currently ranks 12th in passing yards allowed, and they are number 1 in points per game allowed at 15 total points allowed. It just doesn't feel like a good opportunity. Hopefully, maybe Kenneth Walker is back, because that might help. But otherwise, I still don't believe Geno Smith is a play. I don't think he's somebody you should lean on this week, especially in the first round of the playoffs, especially with this matchup as well. Jim, what do you got at the quarterback position?
Oh, hold on. I got for gold, I got Mac Jones versus the Raiders. I know last week wasn't the greatest, no touchdowns, the interception. But Raiders have actually been a sieve to the quarterback position, even allowing Russ to cook good enough that this team is looking like the perfect bounce back game for Mac and the Patriots as they continue to march towards a playoff spot. I don't expect them to ask him to do much, but I expect him to end up being a good, solid, super flex option for your team and being a gold option. And the fool gold I got going this week, this hard one to come by. because I know it's really, really hard to bench this guy. But after going back and forth, it's Trevor Lawrence versus the Cowboys. I could be wrong with this matchup, but again, this Dallas defense has been a nasty beast that is going to get at Lawrence quick, going to make him think, and I think going to make him stink because, what I like to say at my job is I'm not paid to think, I'm paid to stink, but he is definitely paid to think and not stink. Sorry for stinking it up there. But who do you got going for what's the next position? Running backs?
Running backs. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually like Trevor Lawrence as a pick because I really considered him too. And I do believe going down in the fool's gold of the running back position, I do have one of his counterparts. Gold, I got Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. I got both of them against the Houston Texans. I know you're going to love this one, Jim. The duo of KC running backs both delivered top 24 performances, including Jerick McKinnon was the RB1 this week. They both put up 12 plus points. McKinnon, I think, was 32.2. While it's been a tough backfield to trust and gauge, sometimes the matchup is absolute money. The Texans are one of two teams that are allowing over 160 yards per game on the ground. They have allowed four games where two running backs have managed 10 plus points. Plus 8 running backs have gone over 100 plus yards from scrimmage this season against them. They're allowing an absurd 28% more points to fantasy running backs than the league average. Jerick McKinnon can feast through the air through simple just check down passes, and Isaiah Pacheco can feast on the ground. They can both work, I think, this week, and they're both incredible RB flex options. At a minimum, they're definitely a super good flex option. Fool's gold, I got Travis Etienne against Dallas, and I really considered Trevor Lawrence as well. Like, I considered like a stack of these players, except the only thing that held me back from Trevor Lawrence was it is a matchup where the Dallas offense could cause havoc, but the Dallas offense is known to put up a lot of points. So maybe in garbage time, Trevor Lawrence could save you if they're forced to make a comeback or forced to put up some points and throw the ball a lot. The expectations were sky high for ETN especially when J-Rob left. They reached unprecedented levels then. Unfortunately, over the last 3 full games, he's combined for a total 21.1 points. That is an abysmal 7 points per game effort over the last 3 games. Dallas has allowed 13% points below the league average to running backs, including only 3 touchdowns over the last 5 games. Expecting another shootout for T-Law and the Jags offense could mean a abandonment or elite of a struggling ground game, who over the last 3 weeks, this Jacksonville Jaguars ground game is averaging 64 yards per game. This is the second worst in the entire NFL. They also have stymied passing running backs. For those who are sitting there saying, oh, Travis Etienne will catch a ball a couple times and help me out, they've allowed 17 receptions for 101 yards over the past 5 games. For those at home, that is about 3 receptions per game and 20 yards to a running back through the air. So I'm avoiding Travis Etienne at all costs, even though I'm certain there are a lot of people who cannot avoid it at this point. Jim, what do you got at running back?
To stop and take a little pat on the back there, Connor, for your awesome prediction there. Earlier on with everybody saying not to worry about Jerick McKinnon and me and you hitting on the fact this motherfucker's going to be catching a shit as a nice little outlet for Patrick Mahomes. And what did he put up? Like 33 points in one league for me, 32.4. Congratulations on that, man. That's a fucking solid ass pick. For me, my gold running back is Donovan Bam Knight versus the Lions, because my God, the Jets have hit on some fucking important draft picks of late. Breece Hall going down, then they end up getting what's his name over there, James Robinson, he goes down. But go back to their draft picks. They hit Brees Hall, they had Garrett Wilson. But then there's another guy this year, unsigned, Big Bam Knight, stepping up when his name's been called. And man, has he looked fucking great. Not a dynasty asset, but definitely a playoff piece for a fantasy team that is going into the playoffs, like myself, who just picked him up in a personal league of mine. And I don't know, I think it's the Dynasty League West 008 League. Looks really good. Like I said, this isn't exactly the best matchup for him in terms of a fantasy matchup for him, but it is a defense that is going to probably get chewed up by the quarterback, or at least has been chewed up by the quarterback. So I expect him to be in positions to at least score you some touchdowns. You know what I mean? And I know this show doesn't preach relying on touchdowns, but I think this is a week where you could comfortably play Zonovan Bam Knight, because he has been a nice looking addition this year in this Jets offense. Going forward, nice flex play.
I just want to point one thing out, Jim. You made a great point on them hitting on draft picks, because right now, if you are a betting person, Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson are number one at defensive rookie of the year and offensive rookie of the year. So very interesting. They have nailed some draft picks for a team that, like, a lot of players were like, I don't want to go there. Apparently the reports came out they were in on everybody, but nobody wanted to go there. They are building an incredible team with whatever they can put in place, especially draft picks. So that's definitely a big bonus there. And I agree with you. We were in a group chat. We talked about Zonovan Knight. The question was asked, what about Tony Jones? Because he's a starter. What about, and there was like 4 names laid out. It was J.K. Dobbins, who was salvaged by a touchdown in that 60-yard run. And I stood firm on Zonovan Knight was the guy to start, because he has had the most consistent role. You were looking for consistency, especially in this running back position amongst all these injuries and all these situations. While it's only been 2 or 3 weeks, it was pure consistency in those 2 or 3 weeks from Zonovan Knight. Why pretend like it's not something you should buy into, especially at playoff time?
Absolutely. Speaking of K. Dobbins, that is my fool's gold, because oh my God, did this guy get salvaged by a touchdown. Now, that big run that you alluded to earlier, ugly as fuck. Now, listen, okay, I have a signed day by 10. K. Dobbins sitting downstairs. Going to give to my daughter when she is of age. If you are J.K. Dobbins owner and you are in a league that this is the absolute last cutoff deadline for your trades, I am fucking sending out offers to every single person. Almost too good to be true offers to every person in the league, hoping one of the 11 league mates smashes accept, because I swear to God, I'm getting out from this ruck. That was ugly. It looked bad. I'm going to hope for somebody that just looks at the impressive box score and lets me dump this plotting back with little to no explosion in the runs that he did have. In short, Connor looked bad. Maybe the worst performance from a good box score that I've ever seen in a long time, man. That's all I have to say about that. What do you got going in the wide receiver position?
I agree with you on J.K. Dobbins. I think that one of the biggest concerns that was brought up, I think I mentioned it earlier in the episode, athleticism does impact return from these significant injuries. And that was one of the concerns I think Edwin Porras, one of a very great friend of the show, pointed out and has said in previous shows and has said on Twitter that it does matter. Athleticism very much does matter. And J.K. Dobbins was not very athletic coming out, and this could definitely impact him now and in the future. So I agree with you there. Wide receiver. Gold, I got Jahan Dotson up against the New York Giants, and this is a Terry McLaurin thing. This is probably a Curtis Samuel thing because all three of these guys went for 10 plus against the New York Giants a mere 2 short weeks ago. After a slow return in his first 3 games, Dotson returned to his regular 80% plus snap share and workload and targets of the early season. Dotson that we were drooling over. Dotson against the Giants 2 weeks ago had 9 targets, 5 receptions, 54 yards, and a touchdown. The 5 receptions, 54 yards alone, 10.4 is definitely easily startable asset from the flex option. This week they go back up against the same Giants team that has allowed a wide receiver to go over 15.7 straight weeks. Plus, in that same 7 straight weeks, 10 wide receivers have gone over 15 points. Yes, that is more than 1 per game going over that mark. My fool's gold, Amon-Ra St. Brown up against the New York Jets. I get it. How can you sit a guy who's been a top 24 wide receiver in 4 of the last 5 weeks? He's managed 12 plus points in 5 straight. I get it. You're going to say, screw you, Connor. I'm starting this guy anyways. Okay, go ahead. The Jets have been an absolute lockdown of wide receivers as of late, just delivering an absolute crush and blow to Bills wide receiver managers. Like I alluded to earlier in the episode, not even Stephon Diggs, not Gabriel Davis, not Isaiah McKenzie. None of the 3 of them got over 10 points. So the 3 of them combined for less than 27 points. The Jets are allowing 34% less points to fantasy wide receivers over the last 5 weeks than the league average. The top producing wide receiver, likely the number 1 in dynasty drafts, Justin Jefferson at 18 points. 18. They even held Stephon Diggs to 21 points. Hold up. Across 2 games. After a tough first 3 weeks against wide receivers, they've settled in their groove, allowing 1 lead wide receiver to go over 20 and allowing 5 of 10 lead wide receivers to eclipse 15. I'm sorry. Buy into last week against Minnesota Vikings all you want, but double check where the Minnesota Vikings are against passing. They are one of the worst teams against wide receivers and one of the worst teams against one of the worst teams against quarterbacks. Not so much for the New York Jets. What about you, Jim?
Well, let me just say I took off my fool's gold after reading the Amon-Ra. That's a ballsy call. Probably the call of the week, if you're right. I think the last time I put Amon-Ra in that spot, he roasted me like a marshmallow and put up like 7 for 170. Good luck, Connor. That's a fucking ballsy call. But my gold, where's the fucking gold? The red and gold. That's Brandon Ayuk, Brandon Ayuk, whatever you got for him. Ayuk, I don't care. The yards after the catch, unbelievable. Terrible thing that Debo goes down. You think this really most benefits CMC and showcases a little bit of the Kittle and the Ayuk. I think this really benefits Brandon Ayuk. CMC is a star player, yes. Brandon Ayuk is a star player, but he's more of a guy. He's more of a guy that would have been more suited to be playing with the scout team, the warm up team, when he was in the doghouse and worked his way out of it. So this is a guy that is going to be looked at, I think, often and early. He can shake his way out of a phone booth. Playmaker. He is a playmaker. So while this, because they play Thursday, right? Seattle division game.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So Seattle are going to be crashing the edges, trying to contain CMC and all he can do. And I think this is going to be a lights out game for Ayuk, right? So yards after the catch are going to be on display for sure. All we got left now, what?
Yes, the tight end position, the
I know
one
you
and
like
only.
them so much.
I know, and I hate it because I'm going against my usual point here. Gold, I got Dawson Knox up against Miami. They have a high chance of having a shootout game.
Gross.
Obviously, like we've talked about in the past about touchdowns, while Knox has been tough to trust, this could be a game where he has a chance to find the end zone. All it takes is one. Plus, the Miami Dolphins are the fourth worst team against tight ends. They're giving up 15 points per game. Over the last couple of weeks, they've had really good luck against George Kittle, which we've talked about. That probably is more in regards to the fact that they cannibalize each other in that offense. And then Gerald Everett had 7.8, which it actually ended up being tight end 11. That just shows how easy one touchdown is all it takes. Couple catches or 3 or 4 catches for 8 or for 60 or 70 yards is all it's going to take to be a top 12 tight end this season. So I'm picking Dawson Knox this week against Miami. I think he's going to find the end zone. I think he's going to have a couple catches. He's going to have enough to get you over 10 points, and that's going to be enough to probably be a tight end 6 or 8. My tight end fool's gold is going to be Mark Andrews up against the Cleveland Browns, who are the 5th best team against the tight end position, allowing 8.8 points to the position. Last time they met, Baltimore's top tight end was Isaiah Likely, and he put up a grandiose 2.6 points. And I went back and I double checked that week because I wanted to make sure that was not a week that Mark Andrews missed the game, did he? He did not miss the game that week. He actually did play 88% of snaps that week, and he was held to a 0 receptions on 2 targets. Only 3 tight ends have gone for over 10 points against this Cleveland Browns defense. So I'm picking Mark Andrews again. I think he may struggle, and there's a major question mark looming over the quarterback position. Huntley is in the concussion protocol. Is he going to be able to play? Is Lamar Jackson going to come back? Is he going to be at 100%? Who's going to be the quarterback? It's a major question mark to me. And I almost think that it could be a true game time decision about what they end up doing at the quarterback position. Looks like Lamar Jackson could be back, but how good is he going to be? How good is that offense could be? Lamar Jackson would have been the quarterback in week 7, where Mark Andrews gave you a big old goose egg. And another stat I want to point out about Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews went off for 4 top 3 performances in the first 6 weeks of the season, put in 20 plus points in 4 of those weeks. Since then, week 7 onward, he has had 3 top 12 performances, and they were tight end 7 with 12 points, tight end 12 with 11, and tight end 10 with 9.4. He has not sniffed the top 5 tight ends since week 6. It has been a struggle in this offense, and I just do not know if I would put my playoff hopes in the arms of Mark Andrews. Jim, anything you want to touch on from the tight end position?
Yeah, sure, man. I'll give you my gold. Yes, you know, fucking shitty ass fucking position. My gold this week is going to be guy that I like a lot. You like a lot. It's Gerald Everett versus the Titans. It was nice to see Everett get the targets underneath. His big Mike Williams was used to stretch the field. Really shitty they didn't do anything with the targets or catch as many as we'd like to see, but it was nice to see that he was peppered. So coming off an underwhelming week, he gets the Titans, who are primed to let my guy cook, as they are absolutely atrocious against the position. I didn't really write a lot down about this because, as you know, I hate the fucking position and talking about it unless it's Travis Kelce. So that's my fucking gold. My fool's gold is Dulcich. He's getting the Cardinals. He's showing pops in the air. He's going against the best team for the matchup. the worst team against the position, best team for a matchup, fantasy wise in Arizona. But with the uncertainty of Russ getting the old conky last time, and even if he is there with the health, there's definitely uncertainty still with what's going to happen. So with the old gripping and ripping under center, he's just an option I can't trust in the first week of the fantasy playoffs. By the way, do you like that little nickname there with the gripping and ripping? Of course you do. It was sexy. You don't even have to answer.
I love it. I like it. This is great, Jim. As always, next week we'll be back. Of course, we won't do the buy and the sell. We'll do the stories if any stories come out of the week. We'll do the gold and the fool's gold. You can sit there and say, "Puh, screw that guy. I'm not going to listen to that guy." But we will review these gold and these fool's gold people that we put in there, and we will accept if we were completely wrong. And we may brag a little bit if we were right, but otherwise
we'll taunt with the trumpet's glory if we are right on all 8, you bastards.
I don't think I've been right on all 8 yet this year, but that is the fun in all this, is that you're not going to sit there and
put together shows that make it seem that we are.
I like it. Yes, maybe we should do that. The bunch of gold and fool's gold. Jim's 8 proper golds and my 8 proper golds, and we can go from there. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening and supporting. As always, make sure you rate, review, like, or subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Of course, make sure if you're on the YouTube, especially the Undroppables YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for us. Hit that thumbs up for the Undroppables. Hit that subscribe button for the Undroppables. Follow Jim at Gold Jacket QBs. Follow myself at Connor10. That's TEN, not the number, on Twitter. Find the entire Undroppables network. If you've been watching this show for even 30 seconds, you'll see it is going right below me there. The YouTube channel, the Twitter, the Instagram, the undroppables.com, the articles, everything you want to check out with the Undroppables. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, good luck in your fantasy playoffs, and we will see you next Tuesday.
I love that outro.